The start of a new year, time to examine our habits, time to examine our addictions. Are your habits taking you closer to truth or further away from it? What we consume, we have to digest on all levels. So check this out. This is just outside Amma's ashram, and I'm making this video. It's the beginning of 2018, just started, and a couple people were asking me here in the ashram about alcohol and drinking and the effect on spiritual practice, and even things like eating meat and these yogic practices and their effect on spirituality, and in particular about learning astrology or yoga or any of these, Vedic sciences. And the truth is, it's actually quite clear that these things are really not encouraged, if not strictly forbidden in some sense, particularly any kind of alcohol or, sorry, it's bright, or any kind of substances that alter your mind and consciousness. One might say that that includes things like meat as well, but I wouldn't go that far because there are certain dietary considerations that have to do with that. But certainly when it comes to things like alcohol or drugs or any kind of substance like that, they are at worst rajasic because they, at least in the short term, stimulate desire and bring that kind of rajasic energy. Rajas is the energy of stimulation and desire and passion and disruption. It just disturbs tranquility. A sattvic mind is a mind that's still and calm. And yogic practices are designed to cultivate sattva, to cultivate a still and peaceful mind, like you see in meditation when the mind is still. That's a sattvic mind. A rajasic mind is just some agitation. It doesn't mean it's necessarily, anger or fear or hostility. Rajas is just activity. It's just, passion, desire, restlessness is the best way to put rajas. And especially like alcohol or like even things like cigarettes or smoking and those kinds of things are, at the very least, rajasic. Meaning, at the very least, they stimulate and even sort of agitate the mind. Always got to be on the lookout here in India. You get hit by a rickshaw or a motorcycle or a car in these little alleys. But at worst, though, they can become tamasic. Like, for example, someone who is drinking all day. If you wake up in the morning and you start drinking, then you have a drink at lunch, and then you're drinking all day, then it becomes tamasic. It's not just rajasic. For example, then it starts to really promote unconsciousness. Well, like everything, there are degrees. Someone having a couple glasses of wine with dinner, let's say, and you would say it's like drinking in moderation, because there are health benefits to wine and all of those things that people say, oh, that's true, moderation. But again, someone who's drinking all day, then it starts to become tamasic, and they're getting drunk. You're getting buzzed off it all the time, and you're constantly buzzed and sort of drunk. Then it's starting to promote unconsciousness, which is, of course, tamasic. And that unconsciousness leads to all kinds of unconscious behaviors like aggression and also depression, which is the main result of alcohol abuse, for example, is depression. Again, it starts as kind of, oh, let's have fun, let's have a buzz, which is the rajasic. But then if you abuse it, it becomes tamasic, and it leads to, again, like depression and grief and sadness and a sort of pit of darkness, which is, of course, tamasic, not rajasic. So it's a tricky question. I was asked this because, you know, we just had the New Year's Eve, everyone drinking and stuff. People were asking me about that. And so again, you know, of course, this is the same with other substances. You know, smoking, like even smoking a little marijuana or something or whatever. Again, I'm no one's judge. This isn't a judge. It's just answering question that people have. But even like smoking a cigarette every now and then, or a cigar every now and then, you know, it's still Rajasic when you do it. It promotes Rajas. If you do it all the time, like you can't wake up without cigarettes, or constantly some kind of, you know, constantly getting high or something, then it becomes tamasic behavior that promotes unconsciousness, addiction, attachment. This is what those things are. So, you know, I have my history with them. I drank for years. I mean, I haven't had a drink because I just haven't wanted it since 1999. And, you know, I drank in my youth. I drank quite a bit. I could drink a lot of people under the table in my day. And I also had years and years of complete sobriety. So I drank when I was bored. And in particular, you know, I was also a musician, playing in bands and in nightclubs and stuff. And, you know, there's a culture of drinking. And I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was fun. I did it to get drunk and have fun. That's it. It's what it is. I also was never really addicted to it. I could stop at any time. Same way with smoking. I was a singer-songwriter, up, you know, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes all night, writing music, writing songs. But for some reason, I never got addicted, even to cigarettes, which is weird, because most people can't just smoke a couple cigarettes, you know, because nicotine is one of the most addictive substances in the world. But for some reason, I just never got addicted to it. I would never want to wake up in the morning and have a cigarette. That was sort of gross. I would do it very anecdotally, you know, like if I was out drinking, or if I was, you know, like I say, up late, like, you know, drinking coffee and writing music or something, then I'd smoke cigarettes. But other than that, I'd leave it alone. So I have my history with these things as well, and I'm certainly no one's judge. And in the sense of doing yoga, it's just a choice. You know, in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, they talk about different foods that you should eat and foods that you should avoid and all that. And of course, alcohol and cigarettes and all that are all things that we should avoid if we're trying to live a yogic lifestyle. So as it relates to things like doing astrology, of course, or practicing yoga, or any kind of sattvic endeavor where we're trying to connect with higher consciousness, you should be aware that these things are going to obscure your higher nature. They're going to definitely dull your refined sensibilities. And that those of you who do drink occasionally and within any degree of what I'm describing understand this is true, right? If you just have a couple glasses of wine with dinner, you might kind of get sleepy and it's kind of hard to study and keep your mind focused. If you're going out getting hammered, then it's real hard to focus, right? So it's not like I'm saying anything new, but you should understand that these things do hinder our ability and our capacity to, especially, you know, maintain the subtle level of discrimination that it takes to know, like, the nature of self and the subtle indicators that are shown in astrology and all of these, you know, refined qualities of the mind and intellect. Using substances like that simply hinder it. And again, the same can be said, the same is true for when you, let's say, eat a lot of meat. And again, I'm no one's judge. People get very sensitive about this kind of stuff, and I'm not judging anyone's diet or anything else, because I know some people, you know, we want to eat meat, or we need to eat meat out of you know, nutritional needs and things like that, but many people don't. They just eat meat because of the taste. And most of the meat, even, especially if it's factory farmed meat from the West or the East or anywhere, any factory farmed mass produced meat is not really healthy anyway. And it's not. It's full of hormones, and not to mention the humane violation of these animals. And again, I'm no one's judge. It's simply, if I eat the stuff, then I'm also contributing to that. But the same is obviously is said for whatever the vibration is of the food that you put in your mind. I'm sorry, the food that you put in your body, it becomes your mind. And, you know, so we're not just eating food in our belly. That food in your belly gets digested and becomes your thoughts and your mind. If you don't think that's true, you're just not getting it. Because obviously, eating light, sattvic food makes you feel light. And again, everyone might say they want to feel light, but what happens when you start feeling light is, the ego actually becomes very light and the mind becomes very subtle, and many people don't know what to do with that. So they go do something heavy to pull them back down into what's familiar, pull them back down into what would be considered the ego or whatever. As much as people say they want to walk in the light, most people don't. They don't know how to exist in that. They don't know how to exist in that lightness of being. It feels spacey and ungrounded, and so they want to eat something to, you know, ground them, or drink some alcohol, or do something that pulls them down into what's familiar. And so again, once again, this is the same example, the same subtle energetic vibration. And, you know, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it's very clear that the first yama, or restraint, is ahimsa, which is nonviolence. Certainly, as it relates to food, not needing to kill another sentient being in order to eat is something we should strive toward. We should at least strive toward it. And those who say, well, I need meat, this and that, if they've never tried, like if you have the means to try and you've never tried, you just say, well, I need meat, then you've not tried. And you're, you know, then the level of your mind and awareness and consciousness is going to reflect that gross vibration of whatever the food is that you're eating. And by the way, we don't just eat through our mouth. We're not just eating food through the belly, we're also eating through all the senses. So again, we're also eating through our ears, the sounds that we take in, the vibrations that we take in. Aggressive, heavy, obnoxious, loud music, for example, has a vibration on the mind and consciousness, a veiling influence on the consciousness. Listen to the ocean and the birds, and then listen to a jackhammer and see the effect on your consciousness. Because we have to digest all of that. We're digesting through all of our senses. We're digesting through our eyes as well. Look at beautiful scenery like I'm looking at now. The beautiful trees and the Arabian Sea right across the hill, you know, right across the street. Look at that, and then look at gross, violent images of torture or something horrifying. Your eyes and your mind have to digest all of that. What you take in through your senses becomes your mind. So if you take these things in through your senses, through your eyes, your ears, your nose, it forms a vibration that becomes your mind. It literally becomes your mind. It doesn't influence your mind, it is your mind. So we're all here to protect our manas, to protect our state of mind. And you have to realize that all the things you take in through your senses become your mind. The gross vibrations of you know, heavy tamasic food that was, you know, like the flesh of an animal who was maybe mistreated, is very different vibration than something of a vegetable that can be picked and where it's not destroyed. The vibrations of pure clean water or tea or a wonderful beverage that uplifts your mind. is very different than something like alcohol that maybe affects your consciousness and gives you a buzz and gives you a high, makes you feel good for a few minutes, but then over time wears on your consciousness, zaps your energy, and gives you a false sense of elation that dissipates very quickly because you're trying to get the power very quickly. This is why alcohol and drugs and all that are related to Rahu. Because we want to get the power very quickly, but we don't want to earn. But we don't want to earn it, right? That's what Rahu is. That's why it's related to drugs and alcohol and things where we get power through a substance or something easy. But that power isn't earned, and we're trying to shortcut the delicate process. We're trying to shortcut the delicate process of meditation and spiritual awareness and all of those subtle and refined things that are required in order to earn that level of awareness and joy and lightness. Many people drink because they're socially awkward and nervous and all, and it's easier to, you know, face people or show up in situations with some alcohol or whatever. That's why I used to drink. So sometimes it's harder to be sober and face the world without that kind of without that sort of chemical inducement. So anyway, ponder these things. Again, I'm no one's judge. I've done all of it myself. And I don't judge anyone for doing anything. But everything does have a vibration, and you're responsible for it. So we'll leave it at that.